So let's start on you reflecting on your own story of being a target of bullying, and how difficult was it for you to share that?
One of the things that I speak about is that I'm many things, but weak is not a word that I get associated with. And the reason I say that was that it was once I've understood what was actually happening, that I'm actually being bullied, my first response was, no, I cannot be bullied because I'm not weak. And that's one of the misconceptions that many people have about people that are being bullied, that it's people that are not strong, people that are not weak, that are weak, people that can't speak for themselves. So first of all, that was the first thing, no, I cannot be. And then, of course, I moved on to, well, I believe I am, because I'm a curious person. I went on and read, and every time I find myself in some kind of a bind, I go and read and find stuff up. And then I stumbled into work, that actual research that has been done and for many years in the Western countries, and that this thing has a name, and the name is bullying. And this is one of the complexities about workplace bullying, is that more often than not, we don't recognize it because we don't, first of all, there's some kind of a shame associated with it, that you might not be strong. And it's also, it throws a lot of self-doubt, because even I, with the strong character that I do have, I had moments of actually questioning myself, of self-doubt. What am I doing to trigger this behavior? Maybe if I try harder, maybe this, that, or the other. So there was a lot of self-conversation and a lot of self-searching and a lot of self-doubt.
Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part, isn't it? When you then start questioning yourself and you wonder, what did I do to deserve this? Talk a bit about that process of healing. To my earlier point, that you kind of move through that quickly because you want to get to, all right, how do we work through this stuff?
So one of the things that I write a lot about it, I'm a very, very reflective person, and I write. I actually didn't know that I'm a writer, and come to think of it, I've actually always been a writer, because I write about my thoughts all the time. I write about my feelings. I journal. So part of the process that helped me through that was through journaling. I wrote my feelings. I reflected. I chose stillness and not to react, and stillness, and I got into interesting things like meditation and sit still, shut the noises that are going in your head, try to understand. So that was a process of actually shielding myself in a way and helping myself to process, to understand what was actually happening, by writing down what I was feeling, by writing down everything that was happening. And that, I'm actually glad that I did that, because I actually had to go back to my stack of journals in the process of writing this book to look at some of the things that I have put in there.
The compassion that you then able to extend to perpetrators of bullying, to the abrasive leaders, do you think that would have been possible if you hadn't done this healing work, the reflective work that you speak of?
Well, one can never know for sure, but I think a lot of the healing and the reflection played a big role, because at some point, I was also influenced by what I hear, what I see, and I was very quick to judge and to say, I'm not even getting involved here. And over time, with my own self-reflection, what you call self-healing, And even my language started to change in terms of how I refer to, you call them perpetrators, I call them abrasive leaders. And the reason I chose abrasive, the term abrasive leaders, because abrasion is a behavior, and a behavior can change. Whereas when you say somebody's a bully, that's an identity. An identity is something that you wear, and that's what you are. So once I made that distinction for myself, that's when I was actually able to open myself to your, what you call compassion, to extend the compassion to abrasive leaders, because I first and foremost looked at what they are doing as abrasion and an abrasive behavior. If it's behavior with targeted intervention and with the right support, they can change. Of course, I've also had instances where I was actually even questioning the abrasive leader, the abrasive definition. And there's also, in my work, I've met one or two people that I would call narcissists. And with narcissists, it became also very, very clear that no matter what I do, you can throw all the compassion you want towards them. They don't see themselves as a problem. Everybody else is a problem. Everybody's stupid. And then I began to also understand, to be able to detect who is in front of me. And when I was dealing with the person that was a narcissist, I knew immediately. And I actually went back to the people contracting me and just said, I really, really love the fees that you are paying me, but I'm going to have to stop because this is not going to work.
Mm-hmm. So they don't get compassion, the narcissists?
So, well, it's not that they don't get compassion, but for someone to change, it has to come with commitment. And there's also acknowledgement, because one of the things that I've found because my process is also quite different and a little bit tough, because one of the experiences I've found is that people would complain about a leader, but when they do the 360 survey, their results come blossoming. And they always say, I don't understand. Why are people saying I'm being bullied, yet look at my results, yet look at the survey? But then we all understand, at least I do understand, that people are not going to be out straight. So what I do once I start working with a leader, to provide that evidence, and I usually introduce myself as, in fact, I'm your ally. I'm here to help you understand why you rub people the wrong way. And the only way we can understand why you rub people the wrong way is for us to gather information, data, I'm an academic, I'm a researcher too, so do research about how you show up, how you show up in front of people. So I would literally interview every single person that report into the leader, the peers, and it's an elaborate process. And I, of course, gather the information, and then I've grouped them into themes that then we have a conversation around. And usually the first time when I come with that report, it's a very, 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 very tough conversation, very difficult conversation.
Let's just go back to talk about targets again, and then we'll come back to speaking particularly about the perpetrators of the bullying. And let's locate it in the South African context, right? The very gendered and racialized nature of interactions and tense interactions in the workplace. We're a country of people who walk around carrying a lot that isn't spoken about, or we feel we aren't free to speak about in the workplace. To Doc's earlier point, leave it at home. We'd much rather run with the stronger together slogan than actually unpack the tough issues, the very layered nature of our interactions in the workplace. As soon as it's conflict between, a white person in a senior role and an African person in a subordinate role, immediately we say it's racial and so on, and then you bring the gender component as well. Unpack that a bit more. But then you also bring in an interesting point in the book as well about the rare cases of upward bullying. Speak to that, particularly the South African context. What makes it interesting, or maybe not so much, not too different from what we see in the rest of the world.
Well, the central theme of any kind of bullying is power, or power imbalance. So one person having more power than the other, and power comes in different forms. In the normal, usual way that we know, it comes with the position that you hold, where you sit in the box of the organogram. So that gives you power, because for certain people to get what they want, you control that. In the same way as upward bullying, you may not be in that big position, but you have access and strong relationships with people that have power. So that is what I often call power by association. And I'll give an example. My first interview with a target, the person was saying, the person bullying me is my peer, is at the same level as me. And I said, help me understand, how is that possible? And it turned out that the person that was bullying the other one, even though they were on the same level, was in this case, it was a personal relationship, was the wife of the COO. So what happens, you've got functions, you go away, and they get access to information that otherwise, had it not been about, because of their personal relationship, they would not have had access to. So that gives you some kind of form of power by being your proximity to the sources of power. And of course, you talked about in the South African context, it is gendered, it often is gendered, and at the same time racialized, and it also cuts across. My bully was a Black woman, very powerful, professional Black woman, and other people were also, it was racialized, other people it was gendered, but it's always about power, about exerting power, and using power to get what you want.
Let's then talk about the types of bullies you highlight in the book. You say there are several, but you highlight three. We've touched a bit on the narcissists. You speak about the conquerors. Let's talk about that lot, the lot that like the spotlight to shine on them, that very early on are already scouting to see who potential targets are. Let's talk about how those people show up.
Yeah. So often, again, it's one of the things that I talk about, that I write about, is that often, again, in the research that I've done, is that the people that bully the targets, there's something that the target has that they do not have, or they wish they had. So part of this side is oh my word, what is going on that side? So it's usually about the people that are being targeted, and the conqueror also is about wanting the spotlight, because if you are good with people, for example, you've got good interpersonal skills, you become the go-to person. Every employee, everyone that has got an issue, you become the go-to person. And as a result, you're seen as a threat because the spotlight is being taken away from them. So those are some of the how they show up, and how they do that often is by putting you in your place. Sometimes you would say what you think that is the most brilliant thing that you've said today, and they would kind of diminish it or crush it or this or the other.
Mm-hmm. Or some of the abrasive leaders you work with, do they fall under the Conqueror bucket? Tell us a bit more about how, and if so, when you started engaging them, how did they show up?
Well, first, perhaps how they show up is a lot of mistrust for me, and checking me out in a way of, even the way they position themselves and they speak is to demonstrate that they are good, they know stuff, they're knowledgeable about whatever it is that I might have been brought to work with them around, almost saying, I don't understand why you are even brought here, because everything that you're gonna almost like what is it that's new that you're gonna tell me? And of course, the suspicion that why are you brought in? Perhaps I'm being brought in to do the dirty work of the butchery work, so to speak. Also, because half the time, in fact, in almost all the cases and the people that I work with, how I get to work with them is usually through being reported through anonymous whistleblower. So there is a lot of anger and reluctance into that. So that usually the first phases and the contracting is very, very emotionally charged in most instances. Because there's also, and we are human beings, everybody's going to be defensive, and are very, very defensive because nobody wants to be seen in a bad light.
Yeah. It's the spotlight they don't want.
Yeah, it's the spotlight that they don't want. Yes, correct. That's actually a nice way of saying.
And then there's this group, the performers. I've heard of the term the insecure overachievers. They're brilliant, very sharp, perform well, but very low self-esteem. Mm.
One of the things that I some of the performers I've come across, and again, I just wanted to say, and not their own fault, because some have found that they've been promoted too quickly for different reasons. In other instances, they may be promoted quickly because they're great and they've got talent. They show talent, but they may not have been ready for the quick progression that they landed in front of them. In other instances, is because they progress too quickly because, again, of association and proximity to power. So, and those, how they show up is they are afraid to be found out that I'm actually incompetent. There are certain areas where I'm incompetent. And in areas that I'm incompetent in, so how they cover that up is by showing up, by, throwing around the power.
Oof, incompetent is harsh, no? I don't know why that touched me, but it just feels like it might be an area of growth, right? Because if they're contributing to the output in the organization, if I think about, again, professional services, the whole up or out culture, you're likely to move up very quickly. You become partner very quickly, from associate, business analyst, associate. You move up very quickly. So it almost feels as though in higher pressured environments, you're more likely than not to encounter people who are managing a team, however small, or holding a very important chunk of the work, who have no business being there. Ooh, that's scary.
Yeah, it's that, and in some instances, it's not total incompetence. You may be incompetent. You may be competent in other areas, but not competent. Because to be a senior manager, to be an executive, you require a different kind of competence, which is different to being a specialist. Because when you're a specialist, you specialize in a specific area, but in order to be a leader, you require much more. And a lot of it also is around, I mean, one of the things that Dr. Lulu spoke about is about people. How do you lead people? So it's not overall incompetence, but it might just be that you don't have all the requisite competencies that are required for you to be a leader.
Then let's talk about the manipulator, that vindictive, all about self-interest. It's almost as though you can see them coming a mile away. Is that always the case, the manipulator, or are they hustling you and before you know it, they're right here?
The manipulators are very, very tricky.
Yeah.
And they're often very politically savvy. You know,
they play the game.
They play a game, and they play the games very, very well. I mean, one of the things that I talk about my own experience was that my bully was, in hindsight, I'm actually realizing that now, was also a manipulator. She was very, very great in public. On the public platform, oh my word, everybody loved the person and say the right things. And the minute they turn their back and they look at you, it's something else. And then it becomes your word against them. And this is where the self-doubt, is this really happening? Is it true? Maybe they're right, maybe it's me. So they're very, very good in playing that game.
And she didn't like color. Yeah. I'm glad there's a bit of, is that orange? It's close to orange. She didn't like orange and green.
Yeah, oh my God, the lime and the orange. Everybody that knows that I do love it, at least today. Well, I still have color.
Yes.
But I mean, it was, in hindsight, part of being reflective. In hindsight, I do realize that it's there, because there's usually signs. There are usually signs, but we don't pay attention to the signs, and we're like, oh no, there's that, maybe they're testing this, as was the case with me. Yeah. And because at some point I was like, oh, but maybe it was a little bit too much. Orange and lime. Lime green might have been too much.
Color, doesn't she look amazing tonight? Somebody really loves what you wear. She's like, So I wanted to just move along. Just watching the clock, because really want to hear from the folks in the third row and everybody else here. But let's talk briefly about bystanders, because this is really an important group of people who are really then saddled with a very difficult decision. Do I speak up? And if I do, I make myself a target. Do I keep quiet? And if I do, I could be seen as somebody who was a coward. Or do I run for the hills in the realization that this, in fact, is not the environment I want to be in? Bystanders are also in a tough situation.
Mm-hmm. They are in a tough situation. And this is why I was interested to actually talk to bystanders, and I sought them out. I found people that have observed. Once I have defined and they understand what bullying is, what behaviors are constituted as bullying, and how it shows up. Almost like the first generic response was self-preservation. Looking, oh, this is terrible. But I'm so glad it's not happening to me. So I better just lay low and not do anything about it. And also because those that speak up, they end up being targeted anyway. And they kind of are being made examples of. So part of the The tactics is about inducing fear so that you don't speak up. But what I'm saying, one of the things that I say, and I really, really do believe in, is silence is complicit. As a bystander, when you see something happening and you don't say or do anything about it, you're complicit. But I also understand more often than not they don't know how to intervene. But and this is what hopefully the whole book is about, and is also contributing to how you can intervene in a safe way, in a way that you don't draw the attention to yourself. Having said that, though, those when I work with bystanders, I say, well, today's bystander is tomorrow's target, because you can never be sure, and put yourself in the target's shoes when something is happening to you. How would you feel like when everybody looks away?
Can you ever really know whether or not you aren't at risk of being the target should you speak up? It almost feels as though organizations having or calling for people to talk or speak out anonymously is the best way to go about it, because you just never know.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I really propagate, and it also touches on what Dr. Lulu's opening remarks are about, is the role of leaders. One of the things that I really, because leaders, and in my other forums, I talk about the leadership shadow, because leaders cast shadows in their direct environments. How you lead shapes how the environment actually everybody else leads. Yeah. So that's my strong belief, and working with leaders, having been a leader myself, I really do believe that it starts with leaders to create that psychologically safe space where people can feel can feel free to speak up without fear of retaliation.
It's the whole issue of people leave leaders or bad leaders. Yeah. They don't leave organizations.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The culture, shaping how leaders can influence and shape culture. They don't do it alone, though, do they?
No, they don't do it alone, but they set the tone. So it's about the leaders having clarity about the kind of environment, the kind of culture. We all talk so much about culture, but we often fall short of defining the kind of culture you want to have and how it looks like. And you work on it, you cultivate it. The thing about culture is that even if you don't define it, you have a culture. The problem is if you don't define it and if you don't intentionally cultivate it, it's more often than not the culture that you don't want.
Double click on that point, and then I have one final one before we open up to the floor. Do people still talk about 7-0 wasn't quite the right fit? Right? Because all of that is within, well, this is how we do things here. This is the culture of the organization. And so if that person doesn't fit, they're the problem, not the culture.
They do. And in many areas, I often ask the question, what are you hiring for? Are you hiring and looking for something and somebody that looks and feels and smells like you? Or are you hiring somebody to contribute to what you're wanting to create? So we still talk a lot in many organizations, the corridors that I walk. We still kind of talk about fit. And I believe I always challenge, is it about fit or is it about contribution to what we're wanting to create? But in order for you to be able to hire for contribution, you have to first know exactly what it is that you want to create.
Okay. There's more to that one, but in the interest of time, you are on a mission to rehumanize the workplace. So what is your next in your field of expertise in making workplaces safer for all? There's a PhD, done and dusted. There's a book, The First, done and dusted. How does this continue to take shape?
All I really want to do is one of the things, and I'm glad you asked this, and I'm glad I'm thinking about the answer that I'm thinking about now. So what is next? You probably would be curious about this. I had a few iterations and one with me, beautiful pictures and all that. And then when I saw this, it just stuck with me. And Tracy, I don't know if Tracy is still here, the publisher, I still asked you to ask what the meaning was. But what it represented for me, I think it really captures the notion of what bullying is. Oh, Akauwa, now that I see you, I sent, my sister was one of the people I sent the pictures of what do you think about this cover? And her response was, this picture image is jarring. And I thought to myself, then that's the right picture because workplace bullying is jarring. People are not seen, they are not heard, they don't have mouths, there's no employee voice. And when you look at how the image the person is sitting, that's really how it feels like. So part of what I'm wanting to do, what is next, and then here on top is a butterfly. We all know what a butterfly represents, right? Metamorphosis, change, there's hope. So part of what my mission now is continue on working with people and with leaders on the butterfly, on the transformation of organizations, on transforming the way leaders lead, and on focusing on what are human-centered leadership. Hence, one leader at a time. For me, it's just working with one leader at a time.